What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Green Room. Today's a little different. We got Pastor Blake on the pod with us today, diving deeper into relationships.
Yeah, I feel like Tuesday was it was really good, honestly. Like just the seeing the end result was what really solidified the effect that really God's words spoken through Pastor Blake had on the room. Um, yeah, just seeing so many people brought to tears and recognize that, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen and that being in a relationship is not something that just happens between, man and woman, but something that God to the being, to their, to that partner. Um, yeah, let me just jump right into it. Some of the, sorry, let me just jump right into it. Pastor Blake referenced Ephesians 5 and verse 22, right? It talks about wives submitting to your husbands. And I think that's always an interesting verse and not initially knowing like what that truly means in the biblical sense, right? A lot of young ladies, and including myself, I'm like, submit. I don't really want to do that. But I thought it was really interesting how Pastor Blake broke it down and about how submitting to your husbands is like let's read, let me just read it. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Um, he is the savior of the body. And so that right there, it's more so like submitting to your husband is really an act of submitting to God, right? And not to say that your husband is God, but that you're being obedient to what God wants you to do. And I think obedience is something that is just like really crucial to, I think, our relationship with God, but doing that and then seeing how it affects our relationship with others around us. Something pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about that verse from like a woman's perspective, on the flip side of that, like being a man and reading the second part is that um, it said, "Men lead your wives," and hold on, let me read it. Can I see that?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. It's up there.
Husbands, love your wife just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Pastor Blake talked about dying to yourself and before your wife, and putting your family first. And I believe that, like, to be able to lead a relationship, you have to be able to die to yourself. And Pastor Blake kind of mentioned that, but to go into that and not be ready to die before you get in a relationship is like super important. And you can't lead another person or a family if you're prideful and not humble enough to just put them first, you know?
That's what I really liked how you kicked it off with that and just talking about like if you're not able to submit to God, you'll never be able to submit to a person. Um, and that was something that really opened my eyes up because I feel like so many people are trying to find relationships or trying to build something when they're not even finding their relationship with God. You know what I mean? Like actually submitting to God. So that's kind of what I wanted to ask. Like, what was your thoughts behind starting off with that?
Yeah, so really my hope with the sermon itself was to get for it to be for everyone, right? Because like the whole idea was this idea of like before the person. Like, what are these things what's the relationship advice I'd give you, like, as someone who was single till I was almost 30, got married, and now on this side of it, what advice do I have to like the younger version of myself? And the reason I went to Ephesians 5 was because that's really the most explicit like explanation of what our duty is to our spouses. And if we're single, the whole thing that we're trying to do in dating is evaluate for a spouse. Like so marriage is the goal, not dating, right? Dating's not a destination. Like marriage is where we're trying to go, but that's supposed to actually be a picture of the gospel in the world, our how we are interacting with each other as husband and wife. And my whole reason to even bring that text up was, how are we going to do the duty of a husband and a wife if we don't even know what it's like to submit to God? How will, as a woman, will you ever be able to submit to a man? And not just a man, like, because it's not women submit to men, it's wives submit to your husbands. And the whole context behind that is you have a choice of who you marry. And so if you can't submit to this person that you're dating, you're probably not going to make it in marriage. Also, Like the same thing on the other side. If you're a man and your job is to die as Jesus, to love as Jesus is loved unconditionally, when she's at her worst, you love anyway, not when she changes, not when you're respected, like, but to love on her worst day, because that's how he's loved us. And if we haven't experienced that love, how can we ever show it? Because that's the whole thing. Like if you can only express what you've experienced. If you haven't felt a love like that, if you only known broken love, you're only able to give broken love. But to experience a perfect love that on your worst day, God met you and he changed you and he loved you when you were busted and crusted and all messed up, for God to still choose you and love you and not say, hey, you got to clean that up and change before I love you, but I'm going to love you first. If we can't feel that on like a molecular, like heart level, we'll never be able to love a woman that way. And so that was what I was trying to get at, is like, man, we have to first, before a person, really dive into what does it look like for me to submit and receive the love that God has for me? Because it's out of that relationship, that primary relationship with God, that every relationship flows out of. And so that's kind of why I went Ephesians 5. It wasn't necessarily to just say like, hey, these are the roles, but in reality, I'm like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. If that's not what you want to sign up for, then like, you might not want to date that person anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? And so just trying to go to start with the end in mind was kind of the hope behind bringing up Ephesians 5.
Something that you said just now and in the sermon was about the choice, right, to choose your partner. And I think one of the notes that I took down was that you can't pair yourself with someone whose mission doesn't match yours, right? And so that idea of we say it a lot, but I don't think everybody knows what it means. Sometimes I wonder if I know what it means. Like I get a visual of it, right, of being equally yoked, and being able to like pursue God with similar mindsets. Would that be like an accurate way to look at that? But I think like it feels really hard to find when you're looking for it, right? The whole idea of someone who like is going the same, not the same exact place, but the same place that you're going, right? With the same goals, with that same level of drive. And I think that when we prioritize like God, instead of looking for that person, another note that I took down was like, we're looking for something that's coming later, but we're putting it first, right? That misunderstanding of the order that the relationship needs to go in, because it's God first always. And we oftentimes, and I've done this before as well, we look for that individual that we think, oh yeah, this is what I need, to complete me, or to I don't know, you just want to like chase after that person, but it's like, are you chasing after God first, so that in the end you're not really chasing, right? You're walking in what he has for you. And I think whenever you just trust God in that season of singleness and trust what he's working on you for, I think that person, like you're walking on your path, and like you're gonna find that someone's walking along the same side like with you. You know what I mean? Like a visual of like y'all kind of like two different pathways, and then like it meets because you're walking with God first, and it's like, oh, he's like, hey, look, I dropped off somebody for you, and it's like, what, you know what I mean? So I think it's something cool to think about, and I think something like that I'm gonna hold like close to me, because I've just found in my own experience that you meet a lot of different people, and it's like, they may look good on paper, or certain things are cool, but it's like it's not going in the path that God has for the both of you. Yeah.
I feel like that's something I took away too, was whenever you said we've put our purpose in a person instead of putting our purpose in God. And I feel like that's something that we all struggle with, especially college students. Like we're so worked up about finding a relationship. And like you said that at the beginning of the sermon, talking about how we put ourselves under so much pressure to find the perfect person. And like our purpose is finding the person instead of trying to find God. And it's so crazy, because I feel like that's where I was going wrong for so long, was like actually focusing on a person. Like, oh, I got to get this person, knowing that person wasn't even for me. But I was like, well, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? And then I feel like whenever I put my purpose in God, like that's whenever we started placing, not even like boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, but actual people relationships, like putting good people in my life where I'm like, oh, okay, like when I follow you, you do this. So I think that was super dope how you put that in there, of not putting our purpose in a person. Because I feel like at this point in life, like we're so focused on trying to find that person, literally that one person, and we find the person, and then it's all about them. Like, we make it all about them, and then you break up, and then what? Like, you don't even know what you're here for. You know what I mean? Like, what your purpose is. So I really thought that was a super dope point.
Yeah, that's what stuck out to me too when you talk about idolizing the other person. You put them before God, and then you go through this relationship or jump into something, and then things get tough or things don't work out like you thought they would. And then you spend all these resources and time and trust and love and whatever into that person, then it fails, and then you don't have anything to show for it. Like, God wasn't present in it at all. Or you'll ask God, God, if you'll give me this person, then I'll follow you. Then I'll listen to what you have for me. But I'm just going to do this and hope it works out and hope that you bless it, when really he hasn't blessed it from the jump, because you haven't gone to him or asked him for it, And I think pride goes along with that. Like, oh, God, I know who's best for me. Like, I know what is best for me. Like, I'm going to go chase after this, and then it'll be good, and then you'll bless it, and just not going to him first and asking him what the next step is.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, being open-handed. Like, if you're not willing to be open-handed with a relationship, like, how can God trust you with anything else?
Facts. Facts.
Yeah, to kind of go so kind of big picture with this idea of another person completing you. That's like very much like a belief a lot of people have, is like, my life starts when a person gets added. Like, I'm in the season of life where I really want a family. I want to be with somebody. I want my person. I want to have some, like, great things to want. You know what I'm saying? We biologically are designed to, like, desire that relationship. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that. But when we prioritize that over our primary relationship, namely with the one who actually can complete us, because there is a person that can complete us, and his name is Jesus. And when we go to him, see, like, I think for a lot of us, we have the illusion that we actually know who we are. But the reality is, we only find who we really are when we're connected to the one who made us. And as we pursue him, not to find out who we are, but to pursue him and to pursue his heart, because that's where, like, we're completed, is in him. Like, we were made for relationship with him, right? Not just with other people. We're made for a relationship with him. And if we have no relationship with him, how are we ever going to know who we are? Because our primary identity is image bearers of God. So we carry his image through relationship with him. And so what we've done is we've put this secondary thing on the front end, and what we do is we let that person define us, and we'll do everything we can to change so that person will stay, instead of God said who I am. And so if you're not in line with who God says that I am, and how he's gifted me, how he's purposed me, how, like, my time with him is, like, directly, like, defined what path I'm going to go down. And I'm not talking about a career. I mean, like a guttural, like, on the deepest side of you, like, I'm made for this. And if that person's not made for that, no matter how pretty they are, no matter how smart they are, no matter how much you like them, no matter how great the conversation is, like, that person will never be able to be what you need to pursue and fulfill the purpose that God's placed on your life. Like, it just won't happen. And vice versa. Like, you'll never be for them what it is either. And so many people I see that they make the end all be all of their relationship the relationship. Yeah. The relationship exists to fulfill a purpose. It's not just the sake of having a relationship. And people just want it to be, I need somebody. And really, we're lonely. We're not comfortable with ourselves because we're not plugged into the one that made us. And that's why, going into all that, I wanted to start at the beginning. Like, we have put the cart in front of the horse, meaning we put the thing that happened later. And I use Adam as an example. Adam was placed in a position where he's close to God. And not only that, he has a purpose before there was ever even a person, right? It was him doing his purpose that he realized there was not a suitable helper fit for him. And so God provided what he needed as he was walking out his purpose. And I think for a lot of us, we think the purpose is on the other side of the person, but I'm here to tell you, oftentimes the right person is on the other side of your purpose. Like, your purpose is first, to know God, to walk with him, to be obedient to his voice. You know what I'm saying? And that leads to the things that we have in life. And I think that's such a common thing I see. I've done it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of us do it. But to reposition kind of our focus, I think matters the most. You know what I mean?
Just to continue off of what you just said, I had the opportunity to, pray for a few people, which was wonderful. And like a common pattern is that, people place, well, yeah, a lot of people place their value in the relationship with the person. And it's when you said that, hold on one second.
I preached something real good. I know I did.
So last night I was reading in Jeremiah, and I was in chapter 47, and one of my notes was, who, and I put / what you put your trust in determines your outcome. And I think that when we apply that to the relationship piece, right, we put our trust in man, then we end up thirsty. We end up like we're still in hunger, right? There's not a level of completion that we can reach because man is not our creator. He can't put in we have holes, right? Because like we're on this earth and we're born in sin, right? And our hearts long for God and that connection, that reconnection with God. And so often we look for those things in the world and in relationships with other people. But, if we put in our trust in God and the trust to find that completion, then that's when we're plentiful, right? That's when we're actually whole. And then actually ready to be in a relationship, because you can't go into it, thinking like, oh yeah, they're gonna, my mentality is like, I'm not going to add someone in, or I'm not going to allow someone in my life if they're not going to just add to it. You know what I mean? Not complete it, right? Not bring anything down by not being something that is going to just propel. Oh wait, hold on, I wrote it down. Okay, never mind. I don't know where it's at. But you know what I mean? Like it's a matter of like, what's the word? I mean, I want to say adding, yeah, just like adding something that's positive, not being the source, not being the thing that you need for completion. And I mean, this just really like stuck out with what you were saying, because I was just like, like a lot of the people that I prayed for, it's like, we were together for a long time, and now like I just feel lost. And it's like, well, you had this view up that the destination was right there in front of you, when the destination is really within, because he's within us, So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this generation is like so codependent on one another, especially in relationships, when your only source of happiness or purpose becomes the person that you're in a relationship with. And if you can't walk with that alone, then your purpose is gone. Like your happiness and what you place your identity in is in another person, and that just, I feel like, if, like we've been saying, like if you can't walk it out by yourself and go towards your purpose, like there's no way that you can bring along another person with a completely different purpose, or maybe no purpose at all, that hasn't spoke to the Lord, or like have a relationship with the Lord. Like then there's no, like it's dead, like it'll never work.
Yeah, 100%. I really loved what you said, Kennedy, about value and how we put so much value in a person. I've always looked at it as a place, and I think this is something that me and Blake have talked about, is like the person that comes into your life isn't going to complete you. They're either going to add to your life or they're going to subtract from your life. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to hear, and like needed to hear, because we, like you said, we put so much value in these things that aren't even meant to last, because God didn't even approve of them. You know what I mean? Like we're like, well, here you go, God. What do you think? And he's like, really? That's what you're doing right now? Really, bro? But yeah, it's like we put this face value on things that aren't even, we think something's worth a Ferrari, and it's not even a Prius. You know what I mean? Like, no shot on Prius though. But I love how you said that. You you also talked about boundaries, which is something big that college people need to talk about. Talking about, we need to set boundaries on 3 things: our time, our communication, and the physical aspect of the relationship. Like what are your thoughts behind that? What made you go towards that? Like, obviously I feel like I know, because boundaries are something that need to be set out in front, because you said place the boundaries in front of the relationship, and also put a picture of drawing a line and how we let the person get onto the other side of the line with us before we even want to set boundaries out. And I really like that imagery as well. So just wanted to pick your brain on that aspect of the sermon.
Yeah, so the logical progression of the sermon is you pursue God. That's your primary relationship in your life. Everything flows from that. From that relationship with God, God reveals to you what he's uniquely engineered and designed you to be and do. And I'm not, like I said, not talking about a career, but this is what you are made for. A career is this big in comparison to what I'm talking about. Like, and that's a whole nother different topic, right? But to find, like, what does God purpose me for? Like, why do I have breath? You know what I'm saying? And when we have that defined, it's easy to decide, is this person with that or not with that? Like, it is the barrier. It's the, like, yes or no in the moment, right? And the good thing about boundaries on that other side of it is, like, one, just knowing your purpose and being firm on what it is and not willing to compromise is in itself a boundary. Like, that's going to filter out a lot of people. So, like, when, for instance, I'll just get practical. When me and Demi started dating, there was some stuff that was like, this is who I am. This is who God has made me to be. You're cute, but I will not sacrifice the calling on my life for you. And what's so funny is, at face value, Demi was not walking like in that purpose. I was a pastor, you know what I'm saying? And Demi wasn't there, but my confrontation in that moment of, like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be about, are you down or not, caused her to even seek God for her own purpose and find, like, no, I actually do want that. And so sometimes, like, the boundary is actually the thing that drives the relationship to actually happen. But when we yield that boundary, we don't ever challenge the other person to see if no purpose is ever challenged, how do you know it's your purpose? You know, and so for us to back and forth and have so many different conversations of, like, this is where my life's going, and then hear her say, well, this is what I feel passionate about. And in that conversation, that's our dating. But that's often not how we date at all. It's, we like how each other talk, we just want to occupy each other's time, and we just, like, let this thing become, like, just this weird hangout. We're both attracted to each other, and we have hormones, and, you know, it ends up being something that's not supposed to be. When in reality, dating is supposed to see, are you someone that I can, like, partner with to do the thing that God made me to do? And what's so cool about it is when you actually find somebody, y'all's purposes, they, like, God uses it to actually enhance and, like, add, like, color to yours. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because it's not just yours, it's ours. Yeah. And then even on the backside of once you're married, you reevaluate. Like, I know I'm called to this, but what does that look like now with you being a part of that? How do we do this together? Demi never had 60 kids in her home, like, doing Bible studies. Like, but I did. But Demi didn't do it that way. Demi didn't see, like, Demi had to learn how to do it herself. But she did that because we were in a relationship and we had to sit down on the back half of getting married. How are we going to do this? How are we going to lead our family? Our family's going to do mission, and we're going to love people, and we're going to invest in people, and we're going to show them Jesus by the way that we love them. And what does that look like in our home? That was a conversation that we had. But that was because we knew what our purpose was. Does that make sense? And so on the boundary side, not to go long, but on the boundary side, they're the things that protect your purpose. If I know that God's called me to preach, and I don't mean just preach, like, he has called me to be an event, like someone that shares the good news of Jesus, someone who is faithful to his word, to explain it, to teach it. Like, no matter what, if I work at a grocery store, like, that's what I'm going to be doing when I'm stacking cans. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not just because I got a mic and a stage. This is who I am. And so if I know that's who I am, I know that there's some things I need to be devoted to. That is not a person, but it's a pursuit of what God's put on me. And so for me to be able to do that, I can't just spend every waking moment I have with the person. So I need to clearly define, what is the thing that what am I going to be faithful to? And let me put a box around that and say, I'm going to be faithful to this. And so my communication with you is going to look like this. And the good thing about some boundaries, you can talk to each other about it. And you can say, hey, this is what I need to be able to be faithful to what God's put in my life. And this is what I'm willing to do. And at that point, what a boundary is, you're giving them an opportunity to continue in relationship with you or to leave. And the only way that you ever get to the end is if you keep putting them up and y'all build a world that you can both exist in. Like, that's what it is. And so the reason I said time was because y'all are in such a time of development. Like you're learning who you are. If you only spend like time hanging out with each other at the house, watching Netflix, like cuddled up, watching TV, like you're not dating. That's not dating. You know what I'm saying? That's like you're occupying space with each other, and that'll eventually lead to compromise. Like you're opening yourself up for that. Like you're literally a city without walls. Anything and everything can just come in and out. And so you saying like, hey, at this time, like I'm going to be gone because I'm trying to avoid temptation. And then that's a physical boundary. Like I'm not going to do this with you. We're going to draw the line there, and not even we're going to draw the line there. That's not getting crossed at all. But there's some things before that need to be put up as a boundary, because if the boundary's the end, what happens if you mess up? Well, it's over now. Might as well. Versus having a boundary and then room and then adding people into it to visually be able to speak into your relationship. Like you're safeguarding your purpose with your time, with like your communication. So many relationships have like broken people because people made promises with their mouth that their hearts and their lives couldn't like come up with. Saying I love you to someone when you're not willing to do what love really is, to die for someone. You love how they make you feel, and so you're going to tell them that, and then you use that to physically get what you want. Like that's manipulation. Like, and so even in how we like, I know there's a lot of Christian, helpful advice that's actually not really helpful, is bringing up this topic of marriage so early. Those things are things that you need to be asking within yourself. Is this somebody that I can marry? To yourself. And then once that relationship progresses to a point, you say, hey, look, I like you a lot. I only want to kind of be with you. And I'm in a place where I think I want to make this forever. At least that's where I'm going. How do you feel about that? And maybe not that intense. Like, obviously, you know your own relationship. What it looked like for me and Demi was, I'm saying, hey, look, I'm not having sex till I'm married. That's what it is. I'm a pastor. I have to live with purity. Like I'm not even, there's stuff that's just a no-go for me. But know this, like, I know that you have a daughter. It was easy for us because we had kids. Like she had kids already. So I already knew if I'm saying yes to even dating you, there is potential in me to want to marry you. That's like on my inside. I didn't tell her that at the beginning, but you have to consider that inside. And as we started dating, and then I got to a place where I'm like, oh, wow, I actually love this girl. Then it was like, okay, hard questions to make sure this is somebody I can see myself with. Can you see yourself being like church being really a part of your life? I'm a pastor. Can you see yourself there? Can you see yourself being, moved at any moment in time to go be somewhere that you might never see yourself if God calls us? Is that something you're open to? And so we had these really hard conversations over and over again where honestly, it felt like I was trying to get her to break up with me because I was like, I'm so about this and I need to know. And some stuff you don't know. But at some level, you get to a point where you know that you know. And then you say, am I willing to take this jump? And then you have the conversation like, hey, how do you think about this? And then eventually you ask them, right? Like that's how that goes. But I think what we do is we often open that conversation up so early and there's expectations attached to it. And it's like unhealthily, like there's a pressure on it. And I don't know. I just feel like that's not wise. It's just not wise. I think in your own counsel, you have other people that you are bringing into y'all's relationship to help speak into those things and all that. But what I've seen is a lot of times in our like conversations and communication, we overpromise and underdeliver, and we end up wounding and hurting the other person. And not only that, obviously we know physically, like when you give that's huge. You become one flesh. You become one with someone when you cross those boundaries. And when you do that, there ain't no coming back and it's not there. You know what I'm saying? That stuff sticks. And just to even say, like, I've counseled so many different students who like are so broken to like, they don't even want to live anymore because they have given so much of themselves away that they don't know how to put it back together. And thank God we have him, Jesus, literally that can set it all right and fix it all and restore. But man, why would you willingly open yourself up to that kind of like being torn apart by giving yourself to someone that there's no promise, there's no covenant there, there's no covering there. It's just, well, we like each other and we make each other feel good. And then on the back half of it, you have all this regret and remorse. And then you actually marry someone one day and you're like, dang, I wish I could take all that back. Yeah. And to save some people from making that decision, like boundaries are important, not because they're trying to steal life, but they can preserve life. Does that make sense? So that's why I was like, man, the most important thing I could give them is like, find your purpose. That's even a boundary. Set some legitimate boundaries. And then like, if you have boundaries set up, it's easy to communicate about them. It's easy to have conversation, because I think a lot of times our dating fails because we don't have conversations anymore. It's just about making each other feel good and making the other person like us and occupying time. Do you know what I mean? And that's not wise. And we got to be wise in the way that we date people. So that's my answer to the boundary in a long format.
Yeah, I think communication for our generation looks so much different. Like never before have we ever seen anything like this. Just like the way that we post ourselves on social medias and communicate, like through Snapchat and whatever that looks like for you, or like anyone trying to date right now. I feel like even with Snapchat, like we have these streaks or whatever, and like we see stories or posts on Instagram like every single day. You see pictures and faces, and like it's like you're dating all these people at one time. Like that's really what it is. Like there's no more like intimacy where you just get to see someone every so often. It's like we're 24/7 surrounded by faces and pictures, and that's a whole different thing. But that's why like the boundaries is so important. And what I got out of it, like there's no need to talk to someone in a dating relationship every moment of the day. Is it's like it takes the intimacy and like the special moments away, and like physical boundaries. Like Blake, I feel like you killed it, obviously, and that's something that we also struggle with. Like young people is like you do it for a temporary moment of satisfaction, and then it leaves you just empty and wrecked on the other end of it. And I think there is a calling for that, like that we just need to be people that are intentional with boundaries and communication, and when we do that as like young people, it looks differently. Like our relationships do look healthy. And another thing that you said that I really that hit home is like you can be dating someone but you're still single. Like we're not married until we're married, and then that's like blessed by God and there's a covenant there. And like so many people today, and myself included, I've been in relationships where it's like we're doing things that married people do, or try to base our relationship off what marriage looks like, but like that will never come until like the day that you get married and like bring it before God. Yeah.
Bro, I love that. I think, like you said, our communication nowadays is so trash. Like, bro, we were in high school, we were in the phase of who has the most streaks.
Yeah.
Is that not so ridiculous? Look, she looks so disgusted. No, but like that's where we are now, and it's like we would rather Snapchat a picture of ourselves with no words than actually have a conversation with people. That's why I don't even have Snapchat like anymore. I'm like, bro, if we're gonna date, we're gonna talk. Like, and Blake put me on the voice memo wave. That's the wave right there. That's the wave right there for real. Here, just take it away, brother.
Yeah, so this is what I did. I don't know, and just to break the fourth wall here. At one point in time, I felt the pressure of needing to entertain the person that I was trying to date, because I wanted them to like me so badly because I liked them. And I felt as if I took a moment off the gas and I stopped talking to them, that they would lose interest and then they would dip. Like, I think a lot of people feel that. And what ended up happening is you project a version of yourself that's not actually who you are. And so for me also, I dated as an adult. I was almost 30. I was a pastor. Like, that's my context of me and my wife. And something I implemented then was, hey, I'm not a good texter. Texting is not a good representation of who I am. I cannot text accurately to who I actually am. And here's the other thing too about text messages. The reason why texting isn't helpful is because you read it in the voice that you're thinking. So you are actually creating a person that's not on the other side of it through a text message. And so for me, the most effective way to like express who I am to the person I was interested in, and also protect my time, and also like give some legitimate expectations for her, that she wasn't left in this like, because y'all all feel this. I know you do. Let's just be honest. When people don't text you back in a timely manner, you go into this freak out like, oh my God, are they not interested in me? Like blah, blah, blah. Because you've had somebody just leave you on red and act like you're not a important thing. And it's wounded you and it's marked you. Like that's why. And so I just wanted to like, let's throw all that out. Let's do this different. Let me try something that I can actually show who I am, not take up a ton of time, and also clearly define I'm going to do this, and I followed through with it. So what I did was I just voice memoed my wife while we were dating. And it would be like, hey girl, what's up? Like just me being myself. Hey, I just got out of a meeting. I hope you're doing good. I can't wait to see you later on today. Like, I hope that you're having a great day. I'll talk to you later. So what I just did in that moment was I interacted with her. I was myself, and I gave her expectations. So then there was no like, I haven't heard from him all day. She recognized, oh, he's busy. He's going to make time for me later. I told him I was going to see her later. And so I set a time, like, so she was in that space where she was completely at all times knew exactly where I was. And just some advice for you men, like your job is to give clarity to the relationship. Your job is to say, hey, I like you. Say that. And if they're not, like, to be honest, they're not woman enough to be able to take that from you, they're not for you. If they want to play games and act like they don't like you, like, go do that somewhere else, you know? And I get, like, for the ladies there, I know that attention is such a big thing. Like, you want the attention, I get it. But I'm here to tell you, like, please, if you're not interested in a guy, just say, hey, man, like, I like the attention, but I don't really see this going anywhere. That's loving. Like, that's actually you caring for them. And as a guy, being able to receive that and say, oh, I appreciate you telling me that and saving, like, my heart that I was giving away. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if we communicate in such an open format, both people can end up still being friends and liking each other as like individuals, if it doesn't work out, you know what I mean? And then even later on down the line, it might be a thing that happens at the right time, you know? You don't know. But if you burn bridges because you're playing games, like, come on now. Like, let's just, I get it. I understand. Most of the time it's out of a trauma. Like, let's be honest. It's because you're hurt. You were abandoned. You've had someone like hurt you, someone you trusted, and you said, let me diversify my options. So if someone does me wrong, at least I got this, and that. And like, honestly, you're wounding other people and yourself, and you're training yourself to operate a type of way that you can never fully give yourself to someone else. And so like, at the last part of the sermon was like, we got to do the hard work of healing. And I think that before that, we can skip a lot of the healing that needs to happen if we can just give clear communication. If there's ever a moment in time where you're freaking out, and here's even an example, like a real example that I even did with my wife. There was a moment in time where I hit this, oh no, if I take one step further, this is going to marriage. And I was terrified. I was so afraid. She had a little girl. I didn't feel ready to be a father, especially to a little girl that was not like my biological daughter. And the weight of that was so heavy, it scared me. And so I called her and I was like, hey, like, I'm freaking out about this. I don't know how I feel. I like you, but I'm scared. I know this is like a real life thing. I'm not playing games with you. I respect you. Like, I said all these things to her, and she told me back on the other half, and she said, this doesn't have to happen. If my heart gets broken, it's okay. I'll be okay. Do you need to make a decision today? And she gave me room to be a human being and feel what I need to feel, and gave me took the pressure off of me to come back and say, no, this is actually what I want. And now we have a son. And now we have a little girl. Like, we have a family because she gave me room, and I gave her clear communication and clear, like, this is where I am, open, honest. And if you know who you are, if your purpose is set and you have an identity from God, if they don't like you, they're not for you. If they're not with you, they're not for you. And here's the thing, you're not for them. And like the freedom of knowing who you are to step into a relationship and not have to do the dance of, oh, I need you to like me. You get to be the person you are and you get to see, is this someone I really want to do this with? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so the voice memo is free game for anybody. Like, nobody has time to text all day. And then also, like, it gives you room to have something to look forward to at night, whether you're long distance, you want to talk on the phone, you say, hey, this is what I can do. If you lay that out at the front end, you're not left with this. You're not meeting my needs. You're not meeting my expectations. If the expectations are set, which you can both collectively set them with each other. We had a conversation early on where she would text and I'd say, hey, look, I really don't have time to text you, but I want to talk to you. And so I gave her clear communication. And so, like, if you break that down and find a way that works for you, like, even if it's Snapchat, if that's your thing, like, but you are doing it with one person individually, like, you're, like, if that's your thing, it's your thing. Like, but I think what Snapchat gets crazy is, like, when it becomes, like, this, like, shotgun spree, like, you're just shooting everything. And, like, man, maybe I'll get some attention somewhere, like, but if you're talking to one person individually, like, I never did Snapchat. Snapchat came out when I was in college, but I'd never got into it the way that y'all's generation did. But if you give clear communication with clear expectations and you're honest and open and you're also willing to take pushback and work that out together and what that looks like, I mean, like, do your thing. Like, voice memos were for me and it worked. It made her feel, like, nervous because she wanted to impress me and, like, oh, I don't want to sound silly. And so then it made her like me more, funny enough. But maybe that works. But anyway, just some helpful advice. Free game.
Okay, it was two things that really, what you just said just now. Yes.
Sorry.
No, they were good. So the first thing was about, like, you know, the attention piece, right? And was the attention piece, right? And, you know, just letting someone know up front, hey, I'm just not interested. And I'm not gonna lie, y'all. No. You know, I think it's a common thing. You know, you get to college and it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna talk to whoever, you know, just for fun. No, sorry, I'm just embarrassed. Anyways. Oh, no.
No embarrassment.
It's safe here.
Yeah, this is a safe place.
Yeah. But okay, focus. No, but something interesting someone told me, because I was talking to a friend or whatever one time, and I was like, yeah, it's not even that serious. Like, you know, like, I'm not giving you 110%, you know? And what they told me was, it was really insightful, and it changed my perspective on it quite a bit. And it was, you know, you give 5% to 10 people, at the end of the day, you're still giving 50%, right? And then the second half of that was what you said about what Demi said, which I think is really brave and admirable, that she wasn't afraid to get her heart broken, you know? And I think so many of us are afraid, right? Because, you know, when we're hurt, that's when we have, you know, distrust or whatever. But I think, and it circles back to the trust piece, right? When we trust that at the end of the day, God is going to be the one to do the healing, and he's going to be the one to say, it's okay, you know, then we don't have to fear that, you know, that hurt, right? Because fear is not from God. And so, you know, we're going to trust him and say, okay, God, you know, if this is something that you're blessing, like, I'm going to go for it 110%, not giving you 50%, because then you're not fully invested in it. And then, at that point, if you're not going to be fully invested, then there is no point, you know? And so I just think that's a really cool concept that, you know, what you said, like she said, is because, I mean, like, I know, like, you know, just in the past or whatever, like, it's like, man, I don't want to get my feelings hurt, you know? I don't want someone to be able to be like, oh, yeah, man, I had her. No, you know, I was only 50% in, you know what I'm saying? But that's not something. No, I'm just saying, is that too much?
We had victims out here.
No, gosh, y'all making me look bad. Anyway. Just cut that out. Okay. No, but, you know, like, would you rather give, you know, the 50% and you know, have something like holding back and be in a place of hurt the whole time because you're not, you know, fully yourself, or give that 110%, trusting that if this is the person for you, God's going to make it happen, you know? And if it doesn't work, then it wasn't for you, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that giving effort is like something that like young people are hesitant to. It's like, oh, this is, it's like embarrassing, like I'm trying hard, or like what if something better comes along? You know what I'm saying? Like J. Cole and Pastor Blake said this once. He was like, there's always gonna be someone better looking out there, smarter. But really, it's like that that stuff is like not important at all. It's like whose heart like aligns with yours, and like whose purpose, like circling back, like does your purpose match? And but we get so caught up in like the attention, like you were saying, like man, that's like so big. It's like, oh, I need this, or it makes me feel comfortable. It's like I want attention because of trauma. It's like I didn't get this from my parents or from past relationships, so like I'm just gonna settle for this because it makes me feel good. Yeah. But like really, you're just like giving yourself emotionally to all these different people, and then again, like they know things about you like that could hurt you, or like there's only so much of yourself that you can share. Yeah. And then like for your marriage, like what does that look like when you have all these people that know and that you've given yourself away to, but you don't have anything valuable to give to your wife or your husband in the future, I think like that's just something that we got to get rid of. I think there's like a huge call to action in that, but we can come back to that.
Yeah, one thought on that too is who you are before you're married. You've trained yourself to still be that while you're in your marriage. So if you've trained yourself to every time you've hit a roadblock in a relationship, you just look for somebody else, the moment that you hit a hard spot in your marriage is the moment that you'll step out on your marriage. If you've taught yourself as a guy to always be looking for your options, to always scan the room to see if there's a cute girl, guess what? When you're sitting there with your wife at dinner, someone's going to walk in and you still going to scan the room. Like you are training yourself to who you are going to be. You are you when you're married. There is no magical moment where you're a different person. You are you. Everything that you do before that person gets brought into it. Everything that you've experienced, every one of those things, if they are not changed or corrected or moved around, like nothing magical is going to happen to make that go away. If you don't deal with the temptation and the habits and the habitual addiction that you have, you're going to bring it into your marriage, and it's going to crush the person that you love most. And the person that's supposed to be the safest place for you, the place where you can show all of yourself, you will keep things from them and you'll never know the true intimacy of complete honesty. And that, man, I'm telling you, is the most beautiful thing to be able to be your worst version of yourself, and for someone else to look at you and say, I will never leave you. I love you. And I'm going to see you through this. And for you to betray that because you've trained yourself to be a type of way, what more heartbreaking of a thing than that? Like, I can't think of something more heartbreaking than that. And for us, I mean, and I was late in the dating, and I got married late by our culture standards. Like I was like almost 30, And man, like even myself, like being a pastor for 6 years before I got married, there was some stuff that I thought that I was over as a single guy that I brought into my marriage. And I'm even talking about like hurts and like ways of thinking, ways of communicating when I was frustrated, that like if I would have only dealt with that, like listen to the voice of God to like learn new methods, learn new ways of like working through that stuff, I wouldn't take it out on my wife. I wouldn't take it out on my kids. Like it would actually have changed so that I can be a whole person when I stepped into it. Does that make sense? And so my thought is, if you got something that's dysfunctional, like call it what it is. Like we all have got broken stuff, and like the goodness of God to allow there to be a safe place for you to work that out in marriage. Yes. But man, how great would it be to not have some of that stuff to carry in? Just a thought.
Yeah. Well, it's one little small thing, because I was looking at, Ephesians 5 or whatever, but it was an earlier part of the chapter, and it was talking about, like sexual immorality, and then I thought about, the physical boundaries and all that stuff, and what you just said right there, you mentioned culture, right, and, that being late according to the standards of culture, but I think something important that a lot of us have yet to grasp is not allowing the culture that's around us to set the standard for how we want our relationships to go, because that's something that's within someone else, and that's a culture in itself. I learned in my social psychology class, right? Culture, it needs at least two people. So that relationship, it's a culture in itself, and you set the standards based on that relationship that you have with God, and being obedient to him. But yeah, that was just like, that was really prominent in my mind.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that over here. Like, it's so hard to go against the culture that is set nowadays, where it's like you come into a relationship, you're like, hey, I'm not having sex till marriage. And they're like, what? Like, you know what I mean? That's so weird or frowned upon nowadays. So I think going against the culture is something that we almost have to do nowadays in order to find something that truly is healthy. Like, going against the culture of hanging out 24/7 or going against the culture of texting each other 24/7. Like, we got to go against the grain in order to be different. You know what I mean? And I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what is some advice that you have for going against culture, and like, or like what helped you in your path of being able to set it straight and like set boundaries out straight of like, hey, I'm doing this and this and this. Like, what were some things that helped you out along the way of doing that?
Well, I'd say a lot of it is you find a person that's willing to go that way with you. If they're not willing to go the like walk the road with you, it's not going to work out. And to be honest too, like there were moments and times where me and Demi didn't live up to the standards that we set, but we had people that we were accountable to, and we would go and confess sin and confess patterns that weren't helpful and like were actually leading us into like compromising situations, especially during engagement and all that. Like, you're waiting for a moment to get married, which is so hard because in our Bibles, like, the context was they didn't date. They had the person, and then it was wedding night. It's done. Like, that didn't have that as much. But we have a whole different set of like difficulties that we have to face. And so one, I'd say, like, you got to find somebody that's willing to like to walk that road with you. One, two, I think if you know why you're doing what you're doing, it's so much easier to stand when everybody else is going the opposite direction. If you know why you're waiting and why you're doing what you're doing, and here's the thing too, like, just to be completely transparent, I blew it before I got married. Like, before I was a pastor, all that, like, I walked in open sin. Like, I had sexual immorality in my life. And it took me taking that before God and saying, God, I'm ashamed of the things that I've done. Will you forgive me? Will you wash me clean? Will you make me be a new person? And because those things, what they did was I was giving myself away to people that weren't someone that was going to be there for me forever. And I was done. Like, and the reason why I did it was because oftentimes what most people will tell you is like, a lot of times you'll step into sexual sin because you want to impress the people around you. You want to be viewed as somebody that's desirable or like status. Like, it's a status deal. It's a power thing for some people, not for everybody. Obviously, it's just like between the person sometimes. But there's like these factors that go into it that a lot of times it's just people pleasing. And if we're looking for other people to validate who we are, we're always going to yield to the culture. But if we know who we are because God said who we are and we're tapped into that, it's so much easier for you to be like, I don't care if I come off as lame to you, because at the end of the day, I'm going this way. And if you don't want to go that way, you're not for me. Yeah. And I think too, like, what it really comes down to is you really have to believe that God has your back. You really have to believe that if you do things God's way, God takes care of you. And even if he doesn't take care of you the way that you expect, you at least know I was faithful to what he said, and I'm in a relationship, I'm close to him, and I'm not compromised. Like, at the end of the day, if nobody ever comes, when I go meet Jesus, I get my well done, good and faithful servant. You trusted me, and you had faith in me, and you used that faith, and you walked it out. And I think, for me, when Demi came was when I had made a decision. God, I'm with you no matter if no one else ever comes. If it's just me and you forever, if I'm just a single guy forever, I'm down. I did not get into this with you for you to provide a wife for me. I got into this because I love you and I want to make you proud. I want to like return the breath that you gave me because of what you've done for me. And so it was easier for me to stand up in that culture because I was like, I'm not in this for you. Like, it was that for what Kanye said, I do this for Jesus Christ, boy. Like you do this for the culture.
It's so many things that are for the culture. Do it for the I do this for Christ, boy. This ain't for the culture. This for Jesus Christ.
Then it's like the cult. You need the culture to validate you if you don't know if you're not already validated. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So just 3 things, like quick things to even say is like, know why you're making your decisions. Like, if you have convictions. Convictions aren't opinions. Convictions are like, I can't go left on this. Like, this is what it is. Yeah. And the more convictions we have in our heart that we like actively like believe in, the easier it'll be to stand up against culture. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times we can't stand up against culture because we don't know what our convictions are. And we think it's a good idea, but we don't really know why. It's just like, well, the pastor said don't have sex. Like, first off, sex is a beautiful, great, amazing thing, but here's the deal. In the wrong context, it's destructive, right? So I want to have the best, that great, amazing thing that God made in the right context. Because if it's in the right context, it's life-giving. But when it's in the wrong context, it destroys you. And so for you to stand up and say, I'm not waiting because that's going to destroy me. And for me, I had already walked that road and I knew it was empty. So I'm done walking that road. That's not it. Life's not there. Life's over here. I'm going to pursue the things of God. And I've seen life and I'm going to see more of it come by walking this way. And if y'all aren't down, y'all are not my friends anyway. Yeah. And not in a way where you're distancing yourself like you're better than somebody, but just I can love you, but not be in that sort of relationship with you if you're not going the same way I am, if that makes sense. Yeah. Where they go from people that are peers that are you're on mission with versus people that you're on mission for. We have friends out here that are you love them, they're your friends, but they don't love Jesus. Guess what? You're on mission for them. You're giving to that relationship. You're not receiving from it. And too many times we surround ourselves with people that we are trying to receive stuff from that are not going the same direction that God's called us to. And it's not that you need to, hey, sorry, we can't be friends anymore. Hey, I just can't receive from you anymore. My job now is to give to you. I'm just going to be a good friend to you. I'm not going to expect you to give me good advice. I'm not going to ask your advice. Not that you're better than, but just you're positioning yourself different in that relationship where you're not just cutting ties. You're not giving the amount of influence that you once gave. Does that make sense? So those are just a quick couple things to help kind of stand up against culture. Because I think a lot of times people think that that's what it is until they're faced with hey bro, that's actually dead. That's a dead way. And they're like, dang bro, you're right. Most people, even the most diehard dudes that are all out, and they're like, this is awesome. You were to really talk to them, they'd be like, actually, this is super empty. I'm just doing this because I think this is what everybody likes me as. And then if you get down to that, you're like, oh wow, it's a facade. It's fake. And if you just act like you go with the flow, you fit in, or at least you think you do. And so that's just quick advice about that.
Yeah, I think jumping from relationships to physical boundaries to friendships and setting up boundaries in that. Since we're talking about relationships, I think one of the most important things that you can do is when you're surrounded by that, and how you mentioned friends that aren't on the same mission as you, that you care for and that you love, just saying no, standing on your no, and not crossing that, or not compromising. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Not compromising your purpose and your why to fit into the culture. I think one of the coolest things that you can do is tell someone no. One of my favorite things is my friend groups that will be going out late at night or to the bars, and I get to say no, I have mosaics, and then they hit you with this look, or what is it? What is that? It's oh, you're going to church now? I'm like, yeah, you should come. And the most fulfilling part about that is it's not that I'm better than you, or it's I'm on a mission. It's if you can't respect my decisions or what I'm doing, I don't really want you in my life. I love you and I care for you. I'll love you from afar, but you're not on the same level as me, spiritually. You're not moving what I'm doing too. And I think that's so important to have purpose in your friend groups, and to be intentional with your time, your conversations with them, because they're the ones that you spend the most time with. They're the ones that give you life. And if you're pouring into something that has no life, then you're just gonna be drained. You know what I'm saying? Then your purpose is gone. Yeah, so it's super cool to stand on your know why you're making the decisions, and spending time with people, and investing in people, and making new friends, people that you would never expect to hang out with. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the most beautiful relationships. Yeah. Ones that you don't need anything from.
It's just a thought from my college experience, pre-Pastor Blake. I had a moment where God radically changed my life, right? And all my friends were on that same. We were on a completely different path at that moment. God intersected my life, and I was oh wow, something's different. But my space didn't change. And so what I decided to do was, instead of just abandon the people I had, because I was on the football team, like I was surrounded by people that like I couldn't get away from. And so I decided, well, if I'm different, I can be different where I'm at. And if I have enough footing in who God's called me to be, I can stay there. And so what I did was I would go out with them still. I would go to the bars, except I'd be the designated driver. Then I'd be the one talking to them when they're like super wasted and they're sharing their entire life story. And I'm like, hey bro, can I pray for you? Hey, I believe that God's got something on your life, bro. He wants to change your life. I used it as a way to evangelize to my friends. And then it became, wow, Blake really loves me. And those same friends that were like, nah, bro, I'm not, because I still invite him to church because I'm on the back door trying to go do that. Hey, you want to come to church with me on Sunday? Nah, bro, I'm not doing that. And then I moved to Dallas after, and it's those same guys that I was pursuing that actually were like, hey, bro, I'm in church. I don't know if you know, but I'm in because the way that you pursued my heart, the way that you, like, they didn't say it that way, but the way that you, like, kept inviting me, that you wouldn't just let me go.
Yeah.
The way that you just, like, loved me when I was not trying to be what you were trying to be. And God was just so faithful to use that moment of just like, God, you've placed me in a friend group, and I'm going to use that friend group to give you glory. Like, I'm going to use this to share what you've done in my life, the thing that changed my life, to help them. Because if you can't see you in the people that you're around, you're broken you'll never be able to love them. If you can't see that they're in the same, something's broken them just like something was broken me. They're running to something because they're broken, not because they're evil. They're running to something because they don't know better. And so I didn't know better, but then when God convicted me of my sin, I did. And so something had to change. And so instead of like, do the other thing, we just like bash them on the head and like, oh, you need to change. You just say, hey bro, I love you. This thing that you're like going back through every time, it's broken. It's killing you. Like there's a different way. Like, so then in that space where you used to be like part of the party, now you're evangelist at the party, And I'd seen like the most, during my tenure of college, like all of my friends were like heavy in that scene. My roommate was the president of ATO, and he was like, I need to drop, I need to get out of here. And we challenged him, hey bro, what if God can use you more, you staying than you leaving? Not you being apart, but you being set apart in that place. Makes sense? And so just as an encouragement too, like, because I do know sometimes when you're in an unhealthy space, you need to get out and get into health 100%. But sometimes the places that we're leaving are the places that God's actually calling us to stay. And maybe what that looks like looks different, but maybe it's those relationships we need to still invest in. But also, like, it's different. That relationship no longer is a peer-to-peer. We're doing this together. Now it's, I'm here and I'm finding other people to run with, but I haven't left you either. You know what I'm saying? So just a way to nuance that thought too.
I find that let me just say the thought first, and then I'll come back and give you the context for it. So what stuck out, right, was this idea of the altitude of your attitude being in a place where your peers are not at, right, but you still being there. And I think about some of my friends that I have that the altitude that I feel like God has placed my mindset at in this season of my life doesn't include them because they don't share that same level with me. But it's also like, you don't want to cast out the people that are around you, that have been with you, and just because like they don't believe the same things as you do. And so it just made me it hit for me what you just said, because it's like, it feels frustrating, and I don't ever want to come from a place of judgment, right? Because we all mess up still. And just because, I may read my word more, or I may feel like, I give more wisdom than I'm receiving from the people that I'm around, doesn't mean that I can't be around them anymore, like you said. I just thought about that. Like, it was just, because that's something I've struggled with my friends, right? And then sometimes, like in the past, I've had this idea that, I have to be in this season of isolation because my friends don't want to, change their ways. They don't want to follow God the way that, that I like on the same route as me. And it's like, maybe I need to shift my perspective You know, it's kind of like a self-reflection kind of thing right now. But, you know what I mean? That's just something that just stuck out because it's like, just because you're not in the same place as them doesn't mean that God can't use you in that same space as them, you know?
No, I was thinking on that very heavy. Like I feel like that's where I'm at right now in my life. As like I just stopped playing football, and like I feel like now with the friend group that and it's a friend group I still have, my attitude just is the same as theirs, and it's so hard to just continue to like pour into them. You know what I mean? And like not get anything in return. But I feel like when you look at it from a different perspective of like, oh, I'm not in this for the return. Like I'm in this, like you said, to pour into you. It just makes it that much easier, and like that's why I'm always so big on like, bro. I have like a list that I text every single Tuesday. I'm like, bro, pull up. Like, surely one time it's gonna hit. You know what I mean? And it's cool because like it just takes that one time to hit where they're like, oh, this is different. Like this actually is so different, and I know that's what helped change my life was just somebody like really blatant reaching out so many times. When like, bro, pull up. Like, just pull up one time, and I pulled up, and it's something that changes your life. So I think whenever you look at it from a different perspective, like Blake was talking about, of not catching something in return, but instead of trying to pour into somebody, it just makes it that much easier. You know what I mean? Because it's so cool being able to share the word and like share. Because I do this because it changed my life. You know what I mean? Like I'm in this because I'm a completely different person right now than I was 2 years ago. And I see how God can use me, so that just like gives me joy in seeing how He can use other people who are in the same boat as me. So that's just something that comes to mind.
Yeah, I was gonna get back to the relationships aspect of it, and this is a big part, right? And the way I've even framed kind of a bit of that conversation is the difference between a faithful friend and a faith-filled friend. Sometimes we have faithful friends that will faithfully lead you into bad decisions and will faithfully be there to remind you who you used to be. And then sometimes you have faithful people that just show up for you and they just love you, but they're on something different than you. And what I've decided and what was the thing that marked my life in that idea was that in order to have a faith-filled friend, I need to be a faith-filled friend. That I need to be someone who walks in such a way that like when they can do nothing for me, just a text. The 4 friends that carried the paralytic to Jesus, he could do nothing for them. They did everything for him, and Jesus said it's by their faith. He saw their faith, and he healed. So to think, am I willing to carry somebody that can do nothing for me? And here's the other thing: they need other people that are willing to do it too. And so that's the key. If you have other people that are willing to do that too, carry people that can't carry you back, that's when you see like Jesus move in their life. Them go from somebody that couldn't carry them. Now, if the situation was reversed, he could. You know what I mean? But he never is if you're not. You know, if you're not a faith-filled friend, they'll never be. And so just as a challenge, like if there are people in your life that you're like, man, this is really tough. Like, I don't think I have any friends like this. Well, you know what you can do? You can start being that friend for other people and see what God does, just as a perspective shift. And I think, too, like, if that's the way that you are, most of the time, those friendships, like, you never know. That might end up in a romantic relationship that you didn't know that you're going to have further down the line. Funny enough, like, me and Demi met when we were in college, and 7 years before we even saw each other again to date. 7 years. We met each other 7 years before we actually went on a date ever. Nuts. Like, why that long? And so just even, you never know what's going to come around. You never really know what's going to happen. You never know how things are going to shake out, but know what you can do is you can be the type of person that you want to find at the beginning. You can be a faithful person for other people, and then sure enough, the person that you're married to is maybe even a result of you being that way. Like me deciding I was going to do that and be a pastor. I met my wife here because I took the job to be a pastor here. And I stayed here even through, like, my friends left and different things happened. I stuck with it because I knew God had called me here. And I was like dead set on the purpose on my life. And God, you've called me to this. You've called me to love college students. You've called me to like preach your word. You've put this on my life, and I'm not going to leave until you tell me to. And so, little did I know, my wife was in, like, she was coming. I didn't do that, God did. And so me just walking in the faithfulness of what God had for me led to the thing that God had for me. So in the same way with your friendships, like, being the person that you wish you had is the way that God leads your life. So just a thought.
Well, I guess coming to an end, I guess like some things, we can go over some things that we took away, or like, I guess a big thing is just like, in culture there's this thing like, oh, I gotta find myself. I gotta find myself before I can get in a relationship. But like, no, like, listen to God, like, trust God, like, see what He has on your life. If you don't know like a direction to go, like, take a step of faith, like, listen to Him, like, worship Him for what you do have, and then like it'll come, like, He'll bless you, I promise you. But you're not gonna find yourself. That's so crazy. Find yourself.
I want to speak to this real quick because I think this is like really important actually. The idea of finding yourself, you change so much, you're not a static person.
Yeah.
My identity has shifted so many different times, even when I'm married. I got married, I was Demi's husband, and I was Charlie's dad. I just became Bodie and Charlie's dad.
Yeah.
Like, I became a father of 2 kids. And my wife is like, to think that we're static people that don't change and we don't have different iterations of ourselves where different stuff comes out and we're in different seasons of life. Like, God is revealing who you actually are. And your whole life is a pursuit of who you actually are. And so, like, the idea that you need to figure everything out before a person, like, I didn't figure out half of what I am before Demi.
Yeah.
I thought I knew and I thought I knew God. I thought I knew God until I'm like, oh wow. I held my son in my arms and I was like, wow, if this is even like a drop in the ocean of what you feel towards me, the love that you have towards me, then I've never conceived how much God could love me until that moment. Yeah. And so the idea that you could figure yourself out before a person, when oftentimes the person is actually helping reveal who you are even more, is silly. Yeah. For those that are like, oh no, I need to wait, and then all the people are like, oh no, like, you know, when I'm ready for a relationship, you're never ready for a relationship. Let's be honest. Like, you're 2 imperfect people, and you're gonna rub up against each other, and like, that's what marriage is. Like, it is literally you and that person making both of you better. Like, it is hard conversations. It's humility. It's dying to yourself. It's saying the wrong thing and like recognizing that and apologizing, even though you felt completely right in the moment. Like, that is how you change. You're becoming something. And I think this idea of arrival is really the problem. We think we arrive and then we arrive in a place where we're ready, then the relationship comes, or we arrive in a place that we know who we are, and then God brings the career or whatever. And it's like, nah, bro, it's the journey. Yeah. This thing is the road we walk with Him, and we are we're developing. We're gaining more wisdom, more knowledge, more understanding of who we are, who God is, and what He wants to do in our life as we walk. You know, and so just as a funny thing with the culture. You find myself. Like, you're always going to be trying to find yourself, but the person that you find yourself in is God. You always, He's teaching you something every moment. Everything that's coming up, like that's rising to the surface of your life, is to make you more like Jesus. Is to make you look more like Him, because that's who we're supposed to be. Like, we're the bride of Christ. Like, we are His partner. Like, God, it is like, it's so crazy. He sent His Son so that people that aren't worthy of Him get to be partnered with Him, that we get to be treated like Jesus when we ought to be treated nothing like, you know, the opposite. It's just a crazy concept, but we're learning to be more like Him, and that's the pursuit, you know.
Yeah, the second question that I had, or not question, but like call, I guess, that I had would be, ask God, like, why do I deal with these traumas the way that I do? Why do I look for attention? Do I not know who you are or know who I am? Like, God, I need you to tell me who I am, and like what I can do to like fill this void, or like, God, how will you fill this? And it's not going to be in a person. It's not going to be in finding yourself. And then really, it's just like to be set apart. Is just to know who God is. Don't fall into the culture of, hookup culture, or getting drunk every weekend, like dating multiple people at once, like keeping streaks or posting stories. Like, forget about all that. Like pursue God's heart, and it'll be revealed to you. Like Blake said, like you'll be made new every single day, and learn more about yourself than you could ever imagine, or like what other people tell you about yourself. Yeah, that's what I got taken away from that for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I would say the two biggest points for me is like don't lose yourself in a person. Like, don't lose your purpose and trying to find somebody, and like submitting to God. As you said, we'll never be able to submit to a woman or God who can't submit to God. So, in all of this, the movement is you'll never have a good relationship unless you have a good relationship with God. And I think that's something that we have to take from this as students, as just people in general, in this long journey of life. We'll never stop growing. We'll never find ourselves. Submit to God, and don't lose yourself. You got anything else for us?
Yeah, I want to hit one more thing.
They like, no, man.
Yeah, I've spoken so much. I want to keep this quick. Yeah, the last point, even of the sermon, was we have to make time to heal. And I would like, this would be bad advice for me to tell you, hey, you just need to like pray and like pursue God and you'll heal. I think God is the one who brings healing, but there's something required of us for healing, and that's forgiveness. That's releasing bitterness. That's dealing with the thing that's hurt you. And it's so hard because like oftentimes the people that hurt us aren't there to say, I'm sorry. We have to take that before the Lord and say, God, I've been hurt so bad. I don't think I can let this go. And I'm even mad at you for letting this happen to me. Like us to even go to God and say, Lord, I release this bitterness and this thing I have against you and against this person. I receive the forgiveness that you have for me, and I want to extend that forgiveness to that person. And Lord, would you heal that broken thing in me? Would you like replace that broken ideology that is created in me? And would you let me believe really like actual truth, and let that be the thing that I like walk out of? Because a lot of times what we do, the broken things we do, is because we have a broken belief. We have a broken belief about a thing, and so we chase that thing down and we realize, oh dang, the reason I'm looking for attention is because I believe that one person is going to hurt me, because that one person hurt me. And so I can't trust anybody. That's a belief. And us coming back to the table and saying, God, I repent, I turn from that belief, and I believe that you're good and that you're for me, and that you have a person that you are going to reveal in your time, that can be someone that I can trust, that's going to follow you. And I'm going to do my job in trying to like figure out if that person's that, and I'm going to give myself to them in faith, because I'm submitting, I'm coming underneath the mission of it in faith and worship to you, And those things are the things that heal us. It's those moments where we step out when it's scary. And I don't know how this is going to work, that like real healing comes. And oftentimes we have to even be able to face it, just bring it before the Lord and say, I'm broken here and I need help. And God in his goodness will always bring it to the top to be dealt with. There's so many things in me that are romantic relationship wounds that I brought into my marriage that I had no idea was still wound. And it would come up in our me and Demi's like arguments, or our mindsets, the way that we saw money and the way that we reacted to our kids and all that. I'm like, oh wow, dude, I'm hurt still. I responded that way because I'm hurt. God, will you forgive me for the way that I just responded? Demi, will you forgive me for how I just did that? And you go back to the thing and say, God, I realize that I'm responding that way because that's what happened to me. God, will you please help me to let go? I release the offense and I trust you. I put that person that's hurt me in your hands and say, I trust you. Like the same way that you've forgiven me, like I want to extend that forgiveness. And it's in those moments where we actually heal. Does that make sense? And so I think it would be unhelpful for us to say that healing is a part of it. Healing doesn't always come before. Sometimes it's in the person that you're with. That healing is, they're the person to heal. They're the one the catalyst for that thing to happen. But if we avoid it, we're just prolonging those things. And I really think God wants holistic healing and wholeness for us, and I think there are healthy relationships that are doable. Like it isn't always just going to be toxic, but it's going to take hard work for us to heal first. You know what I mean? So this is my closing remarks.
I'll just say one thing that was really big for me is that there's nothing on the outside that can complete us. You know, it's all from God, and it all starts within us. And I think that it's not only relationships or whatever. That's peace, that's happiness, joy. All of the things that we seek in the world because so we believe this where it's at is in God.
Yeah. So good. So good. Well, we appreciate you, Pastor Blake. Great pod. We will see you guys next Mosaic on campus. This has been the Green Room.